a lot of my success and people I've been around that have been very successful haven't been the smartest.
Persistence is obviously a big piece. I'm with you 100%. But also sacrifice.
If you had one thing to tell our audience as an entrepreneur, what is one thing that you have learned that you're going to just honed in it's worked for you? What's been the most, like, besides big names, like, names are relevant.
Yeah.
But if you're interviewing generals and some local people that have been very successful,
Absolutely,
I saw
yeah.
one, I'm not going to say a bunch of names, but I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Those are things you see around town.
Sure.
What is like a common denominator that when you get around these guys and you're talking to them when the camera's not on, what is a common denominator, a few of them that are like, you think they get to those levels in those industries?
Yeah. I mean, I can mention some here in a little bit, but I think it goes back to what Erik, you just said, figuring it out. Like, that is the denominator. Figuring it out. There's some other things we can talk about too, but you guys heard of Barry Sternlicht? You guys know who that is?
Mm-mm.
Starwood Capital. Anyway, he says persistence is genius in disguise. I've loved that because
That's good.
the persistence is like across all levels. All these people are persistent, right? Now, there's lots of nuances that go into what you're doing and how you're doing it, but people have the willingness to figure it out. Like, and this is you guys are talking about business, and there's a guy interviewed. His name is Jerry Colangelo. And he started, so he was not the owner at the time, but he helped start the Chicago Bulls. And he was the director of USA Basketball back in 2000. So if you watch, there's a documentary on, can't remember what it's called, but it's on Netflix, and it's about the dream, or not the dream team, but 2004, 2008, when USA Basketball had to revamp, and they brought in Coach K. Jerry was kind of the guy who helped orchestrate that. But he wound up starting the Bulls and then leaving to go start the Phoenix Suns, Arizona Diamondbacks, and he was also the owner of the Phoenix Suns and Arizona Diamondbacks and some other professional teams. But he has a great story. It's a business story.
He was on your podcast?
He was on the podcast, yeah.
That's
great.
kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, he's a stud, and he's very well known in the industry and business. But those types of things, like, I want to try to interview people that align with the same values too, that have done things of significance, but are also doing things at a high level for the right reasons too. Well, Jerry told a story that I think will have a lot of input maybe for your listeners. Back in maybe, I don't know if it was the 80s, maybe the 80s, whenever the Suns, he was the GM of the Suns, he helped start them, but he didn't own them, right? There was ownership. And there was an opportunity, I think there was some challenges going on with some of the players and some PR problems that were causing some uproar, and so some of the ownership wanted out. They're like, hey, we're gonna sell the Suns. And Jerry was like, this is my time. Like, I need to step in. This is my time. This is my opportunity. So he was prepared for it, but he had 6 weeks to buy the Suns. And so they were wanting $44 million at the time, which, if you were to relate that to today's money, it's a lot more. But they were $144 million, and he had to raise 20 in 6 weeks to go and get ownership on board to do the deal. Well, he had gotten really close to the finish line, and 2 of the guys pulled out. They were executing contracts and negotiations. 2 of the guys pulled out. His lawyer came up to him and said, Jerry, you did a great job. We just didn't have enough time. And he said, no. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said, no, give me tomorrow. I'm going to figure it out. So he goes home, and he works all night, and he calls. I mean, the things that go into it are also relationships. He had developed relationships, treated people the right way for a long period of time before he ever needed to use them. And then people wanted to get on board when this opportunity came about. But because he did the work in advance, that he knew what he was doing, he had relationships, and he had a persistent attitude, like, I'm going to figure this thing out, he wound up buying the Suns. And then, if you were to look it up later, he sold in 2004 for $400 million. If you look up now, the Suns are worth like $4 billion. But he talks about that. He's like, I don't look at that and say, I could hold on. But he just knew there was an opportunity in front of him, and he took advantage of it, and he figured it out. Like, a lot of people probably would have folded whenever the lawyer comes up and says, hey, good try, you just didn't have enough time. He said, no, I'm going to figure it out. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a common denominator. But there's been so many stories like that on the podcast. I could go on and on. But I think that one's really relative. It's like, when you have opportunities, you got to take advantage of it, right? But then at the same time, you have to persist through things that you don't know will pop up, and then be willing and say, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000%. Like, a lot of my success and people I've been around that have been very successful haven't been the smartest.
Mm-hmm.
They're bright
Sure.
in their own way.
Yeah.
But you get around and be like, man, that guy's like me, or I'm like him.
Yeah.
Maybe different personalities, whatever. But like, they're just doers.
Yeah. Just doers.
You know, they don't overcomplicate it, and they just figure it out. They never give up. And you're going to have challenges.
Absolutely.
But it's like, what do you do when they hit you smack in the face?
Sure.
You know, are you going to be like, oh, man, well, and then you tell the story of how you didn't make it? Or are you like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm all right.
Yeah. Well, for you guys, think about the businesses that you guys have started and have. Like, if you look at people that have done things of significance or have big businesses like yourself, it's kind of the idea behind. Have you guys ever read Atomic Habits or heard of that book?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well,
I guess I need to start reading more.
No. There's the idea.
I tried to read a contract yesterday.
ChatGPT.
I put in ChatGPT and I was like, convert this to Audible.
Put this in terms that I can understand, please.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, there's this idea behind it's kind of the ice cube theory. And when you look at people that have been successful, you just see the success. You don't see the work on the back end. But when you think about an ice cube, when it's put in an environment, let's just say it's 1 degree, right? The ice cube looks the same. You bump it up to 2 degrees, it looks the same. 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, even at 15 degrees, there's been a lot of degree change, but there's no difference. You get to 30, there's no difference. 31, still no difference, but there's been a ton of movement there. You get to 32 degrees, and finally it starts melting, right? Mm-hmm. But it's that continuous consistency over time. When you can't see anything, there is movement, but you can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys that are willing to persist and keep working, even when you don't see the results you want to see, like those are the guys that are successful. And you guys have shared your stories plenty of times in your podcast about doing those things over and over again. And then when everyone notices when the ice cube starts melting, but when it's
that must be nice.
Yeah.
Well, then for us, like for me personally, is like the people that start noticing are usually your closest ones. Because like, that's something's going on there, and then they want to jump on board. Some of them, and some of them just want to be genuine friends, right? Mm-hmm. But at that point in time, to your point, you know, the ice, you're making all these movements beforehand that didn't have people weren't seeing it, but you were seeing it. Your vision was going maybe not exactly how, but you were on track to meet it. Mm-hmm. And then they want to jump on board, but they didn't do anything to gain that experience with you. Absolutely. Or their self, and you're like, man, like what do you really can't bring anything to the table. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
I think is funny. I love that analogy, by the way. But what I think is funny is that people don't see anything, and they start noticing, right, when the ice starts melting. And then people are very quick to judge, in my opinion, mm-hmm. where they're like, hey, dang, that must be nice.
You got lucky.
Right? You got lucky, or
mommy's money, daddy's money,
or whatever, right? We've heard everything, right? But the funny thing is, they don't see that movement, right, from that 1 degree to that 31 degrees. Mm-hmm. Nobody sees that, right? And they don't know what it takes to get from 1 degree to that 32 for the ice to start melting.
And it's kind of funny because when people start seeing it, what's happened to me is like they start seeing like the things that you, like a true entrepreneur, does not think about. Mm-hmm. Like, I really don't think about what kind of car I drive. I drive a nice truck, but that's not important to me. Yep. But that's what's important to those people. Yeah. Like, I live in a nice home, right? Yeah. But I don't really think about, I don't go home and be like, man, you know what I mean? I'm thinking about my business, why I'm in my truck driving, why I'm at my house. You know what I mean? And when people start seeing you have a nicer house, you get the nicer vehicles, you get the things that in their eyes is what they want. As a true entrepreneur, you're thinking about your next location, your next truck, because you know the numbers behind it. So for me, it's like I pulled that bow and arrow string back so long when I did do it. Mm-hmm. People are like, oh my gosh, what did he do? Yeah, I've been having wealth for a little bit. I just elected not to go buy those nice things yet. You know, it's like the validation for these people is like items and materialistic things. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good point too, is that, you know, persistence is obviously a big piece. I'm with you 100%, right? But also sacrifice, right? To your point, right? Is persistence. It takes persistence over a long period of time, and then it takes sacrifice during that time of persistence to really get what you want to get and to go where you want to go, mm-hmm. right? There's two pieces to me: is persistence and sacrifice, right? Is what makes that man, really. Yeah. And what makes you successful.
And the longer you can hold back from increasing your lifestyle, the faster that ice cube's going to melt. And then at the speed of no return, you know what I mean? And that when the ice cube starts melting and you start getting a lot of success and you start getting more money and you build all those skill sets while it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
Now you can really make money.
Yeah.
You can jump on larger opportunities and you can take larger risks because in return it's going to get larger returns, you know.
And it goes back to what he said, which is the calculation and taking these calculated risks, right? And it's now they've done the persistence. You've done, you pulled that bowstring back. Maybe you have a little bit of cash saved up, or you have wealth that you can leverage, right? And now you've got that experience for a long period of time, right? That you can take those calculated risks. And it's still a risk, right? In everything that we do, right? Everything that you do is still a risk. But now we've surrounded ourselves where we can make phone calls, right? To go, hey, what do you think about this deal, right? Or we have our own experience that we can lean on and go, now my risk is starting every day, every month, every year, our risk are going down, right? Because we've lived some of these things. We have these relationships, right? That we can call these people and say, hey, right, you've been in the trash world, right? You've been in the landfill world, or whatever it is that we're kind of trying to navigate into. We either have experience or we have relationships that we can reduce the amount of risk if we're going to jump in there.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's important as well too.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point. I mean, no one does anything on their own. If anyone tells you that, I don't believe that's true.
Yeah, I agree.
You can work really hard and do a lot yourself, but you can't do everything on your own. You have to bring in people on a team. You have to have mentors. We talked earlier about finding good people. It's like the idea of show me your friends, I'll show you your future. You surround yourself with good people, they're going to elevate you by osmosis, right? If you surround yourself with bad people, it's kind of like the crabs in the bucket. Like you start trying to climb out, everyone's going to pull you back in. That's what you were talking about earlier, right? So having good people around you, but then at the same time, I think persistence, hard work. Like if you were to write a book on success, I remember someone saying this on my podcast. It was Josh Pastner, the UNLV. The first page would be hard work. Second page, hard work. Third page, hard work. Fourth page, fifth page, hard work, right? But to that, I think it's really important so you don't climb the wrong building. Understanding your makeup, your gifts, talents, and abilities, what you're good at, what you have desires and interests. Like there's 3 questions that I think are phenomenal questions to ask if you can, because it's a lot of that preparation component.
And you're saying ask yourself.
Yeah, ask yourself. Is what do I want? Why do I want it? And what am I willing to do to get it? Like, so what do you really want? Like not what other people want, but what do you want? And why do you want it? That's kind of the biggest, I think that's a key piece. Some people don't know, and that's okay. Like over time, by just doing something, you'll figure things out. But if you can think about these things and ask, why do I want it? Right? Is it for other people? Is it because I want to look good? Because I want to, drive a nice car, have a nice house, where I really want it? Because the people I feel like that succeed most often are the people that truly want it, because they're not worried about what they're driving or what other people think. They're just living life. They have peace of mind in their daily life because they're not worried about what other people think. They're just doing it because they get satisfaction out of doing it.
I just couldn't imagine showing up to a job I don't like.
Yeah.
I go to my kids' football games and sports and around other people, and I don't ever not want to come here. I couldn't imagine. I have had jobs like, this is the slowest damn day I've ever had in my life. You know what I mean? Every day I show up to work like, golly, this hour is the longest day of my life. Yeah. You know what I mean? But since I started working for myself, right, there's been days I wanted to be over sooner than later.
Sure.
Or let's restart today. But I've never not wanted to show up. I wish I had more days, hours in a day. Yeah. Some days are, rough. Yeah. But even those, I'm like, I don't know, that's the worst thing's going to happen? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Truck rolled over, bank said, hey, like putting some pressure on you. Deal didn't go as good as it was. You're going to figure it out.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, I've never had a day I didn't want to show up and work for myself.
Yeah. And that's a tremendous blessing. And that's why I know you guys do your podcast to help people kind of find alignment in that, in entrepreneurship and business, right? And the same thing with me. Like I'm passionate. I want people to have alignment of what you just said, to enjoy their work. It doesn't mean that every day is great, right? You have to persist when things get tough, but you have a reason, you have a mission, a purpose of why you're doing what you're doing, right? Okay. And I think with that, it's important just to ask those few questions. What do I want? Why do I want it? And what am I willing to do? It's the cost part. And as you said that, I hope people can find, like, you can find that by doing, right? Sometimes you don't know, even if you ask those questions, you may not know, but really resonate on some of those questions. And then by doing, you'll learn about yourself. Like, this is not something I want to do. Okay, that's fine. Pivot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I mean, I'm speaking to myself as much as I am to share this stuff. Like, I'm always learning. But Phil Knight, who is the Nike founder, he wrote a book called Shoe Dog. It's a great book. But at the end of his book, it's like one of the, I highlight a lot of stuff. But he talked about, he encourages people to seek a calling. And I can't word for word say it, but I encourage people to seek a calling, because the highs will be like nothing you've ever experienced, and the lows you'll be able to persist longer than anyone can that doesn't have that calling. I think that's a great point.
Makes
as
sense.
to what, that's another common denominator.
And some of it, from experience,
Yeah.
some of those decisions you make take time to get out of.
Yeah.
You said development. You go to do a development, and you go bank loans you $3, $4, $5, $6 million, $10 million, depending on what the size and scope of the project is, and you realize 7 months into it, I don't like development. Sometimes it takes you a period of time to get yourself out of that situation. Mm-hmm. I've experienced, Eric's seen that with me myself. Like he just, I'm like, this is a project that never ends.
Yeah.
I realize I don't want to be in this world, but this world it takes time to get myself, I have to untwine this.
Yeah, there's commitments, right?
Right? And I'm always going to do the right thing, but it takes time. So if you're watching this podcast and you get into something you don't like, I've been on both sides of the sector. Some I've been fortunate enough to sell and make a profit on real quick. It's like, God just, hey, I'm going to help you out on this one. And some of them, I think he's reminding me of like, hey, this is why you don't want to do this.
Yeah.
So when the next Yahoo comes in here and tells you to invest in this, or the next Yahoo comes in there, you'd be like, that's not you. Mm-hmm. Figuring out who you are, to the point you said that a few times today, figuring out what you like to do. Mm-hmm. I'm 38 years old and I've tried a lot of stupid things.
Yeah.
I say it's not stupid, it's just things I'm not passionate about. Mm-hmm. But I'm still I have one heartburn that reminds me every day of how fortunate I am to do things I do like. Because when you're sitting down and you're having to force focus, I call it.
Yeah.
Force focus on something that you do not like, and you're smart enough and tenured enough to know that this is going to take 2 or 3 years of this. You're talking about self-discipline. And it's going to cost you money every month.
Yeah.
Right? You're talking about, like, it's a grind. It will wear on you. Mm-hmm. But just, for me, I just thought, you know what? I got myself into it. Mm-hmm. So next time I'm going to think a little bit harder and, like, what is the turnaround time on that? I'm going to ask myself a lot more questions.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things, too. Great leaders ask great questions.
Yeah.
They ask great questions, and they're curious. I think this is one thing that I've seen in my life. Curiosity is also a hidden genius, like Barry Sternberg was saying, because the best leaders ask great questions, not just in their business, but to their employees, to their spouse at home, to their kids. And by asking good questions, you learn. You're continuously learning things you do want to do, don't want to do. I think curiosity is one of those key connectors. And I would love to hear you guys' perspective, but there was this idea of being curious and then understanding, okay, well, I've learned this about myself. Now I need to have courage to go and do it. And then I need to be consistent.
I think the courage is a big thing, because I think I would call it the if factors, right?
Yeah.
People, if I go bankrupt, if I'm not smart enough, if this isn't the right timing, if this, if that, if this, right? I think courage is a big deal,
I do too. I think that's probably the linchpin for most where everything stops. Right?
I just had a kid.
I think people are naturally curious, and probably to get into entrepreneurship and owning their business. I think a lot of people have that dream, right? I really do, and I think that it stops at that level that we're talking about there, right? Is that they don't have the courage to jump, to make that leap, to take the first step. They don't have the courage, probably in themselves, right? To think, hey, I can figure this out. Yeah, I think that's where it stops.
And then they go half in.
Yeah.
You got to go all in.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
You're half in.
Yeah.
You're going to be the first one out.
I tried the half in. I did.
I'll just, that reminded me of something I shared with our guys, I coach high school basketball, I shared with our guys the other day. If you aren't willing to look like a foolish beginner, you'll never become a graceful master. embarrassment is the cost of entry. I thought about that. I was like, man, I hope if I can help our guys understand that, have the courage to just step out and risk being embarrassed, risk the idea of, people looking foolish, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that quote was
Hey,
great.
can you send that to me? I need to send that to my son.
Yeah.
And I probably need to send it to my son.
I need to put it as my screensaver, yeah.
Yeah.
But when you guys look at your businesses and you started, everyone has the opportunity to step into something, right? What was it that enabled you guys to be courageous, to take a step when you didn't know the outcome?
Well, I think the funny thing you say is on that quote is that think about what I've stepped into, right? I went from $100,000+ job, right, to a porta potty sucker.
Yeah.
Think about that. Think about what people had to have thought about me,
Oh, yeah.
and whether or not I gave a shit about that, right? That's
And, well,
I'm like a living.
Your closest
perfect
people knew what
example.
you were going through.
Yeah.
So they probably
Yeah.
thought it took you down.
And not even just that. There were some other insinuating or some other circumstances that were going on that it's not really relevant too much. But I went from being a somewhat of a semi-master at my craft, right, in the safety world of things, to a porta potty sucker with making about half the amount of money, right? So to answer your question, it is a big piece of what individuals or how much they care about what people think. I think is a huge piece.
It holds so many
right?
people back.
It holds so many people back. And I have always been the proponent. I talk about it all the time, like, I don't give a shit what you think about me. You know what I mean? I never have. I never will, right? And that was something I think more ingrained in me, though, too. I think a lot of people it's a challenge to get that thought out of their head. For me, for one reason or another, it's never been a thought in my head. Like, I don't care what you think about me.
Yeah.
Right? I never have. I think I'm one of the lucky ones because that is a big piece.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up. It's
something I struggle with.
Yeah.
I mean, I always want. I'm a people pleaser by nature. Like, I want to do a
me
good job
too.
for people, and I want people to be happy with me. But at the same time, it's funny as I look back. There's some things where, I don't care. I don't care what people think of me. But then there's things where I do care. But when I say this stuff to our guys, like throughout practice, I'll make sure I put quotes up and ideas and thoughts. They're as much for me as they are for them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's something that all these things I'm continuously working on because I do not have it figured out. So anyway.
And I think, and we'll kind of wrap this up, but like, I don't think, I think a lot of people just go through life. They have no goals. They have nothing. They don't even, they don't, you talk to people and like, what's your plan? They're like, oh, I want a house. Okay. That's something you want. What is, when you look at yourself and you're 60 or 70 and you're 30, where do you want to be?
I think it kind of
Financially
comes back to contentness, right?
I don't think
a lot
they have
of people are just content with average, and I do think there's a separator there too, right? Entrepreneurs that go on to be something, right? There is no content, I think.
But
right?
being content and understanding where you want it, I think everybody has a dream. Every single person. I've never met somebody that has never had a dream to own something, run
fair.
something, do something. Mm-hmm. But I think most people have not slowed down and really thought, like, what I am doing now, is it going to get me to that dream?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer is no, am I willing to change?
Mm-hmm.
And if that answer is no, I'm never going to meet my dream. Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with that. But I don't think, if you start talking to an average Joe, they never sit down. It doesn't even have to be financial. Not everybody's financially driven.
Yeah.
But it could be spiritual. It could be emotional. You know what I mean? It could be whatever. I don't think people sit down and just like self-reflect enough. One thing I do all the time, I just sit in my chair in my game room with no TV on. Yeah. And last night, I sit down there and just sit there and think. Mm-hmm. Okay, what did I do today? Okay, what did I do positive today? What did I learn today?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay, I learned what not to do today. Mm-hmm. That was something I learned today.
Sure. But why do you do that? Because you're intentional about creating time to do that.
Well, like for me, you saw the little thing we watched together, and I said $100 million goal. Why do I have a $100 million goal? Yeah. For a lot of reasons. Because I know I can help people. I know I can be financially independent. I can set up generational big thinking. My limitations are not the way I wasn't brought up in a negative way. I was brought up in a small town with small town thinking, right? Only rich people could get airplanes, and only rich people could have that ranch, and only rich people could do these things. Yeah. Well, how did those guys get rich? Yeah. They took massive risk, and they weren't any smarter than you and I. They just took massive risk, and it took time to acquire that, right? And for me, after interviewing a lot of people and talking to a lot of people, I think people don't have any goals.
Yeah.
And then they never work them backwards. They never they never set a goal and but I'm going to get this.
Yeah. And
then is what I'm doing right now going to get me there?
Yeah. It's beginning with the end in mind. Like Stephen Covey says that. Begin with the end in mind. And a lot of this is a practice that I hear a lot of is think about your death. How do you want to be remembered? Like what did you do? Like if there's an idea of like writing your own obituary and thinking about what you did and who you were, the type of person you were, what you were for your family and business, but beginning with the end in mind. And then also too, if your goal is 100 million, that doesn't have to be my goal or your goal. Everyone has different goals. I would just encourage people to at least have a goal, at least be intentional about thinking about what you want, why you want it, and what are you willing to do to get it. And then if you go down a path, pivot, find a new goal, but always be working towards something and be content in what you're doing. At the same time, keep your eyes on your own paper. This is the last one maybe I'll share because I think as you're talking, it reminded me. I love this picture. Many people have heard of Michael Phelps.
Oh yeah,
right. Okay, he was Olympian, one of the best Olympians or athletes ever. Right. There's a picture that's out there, and it has him in a lane in Beijing swimming with his head down in his lane. The guy next to him, I think, is an Australian swimmer, and it has him swimming right next to Phelps, just a little bit behind him. But as he's swimming, he's looking over at Phelps. And I love this for a lot of reasons. But the quote next to the picture is, losers focus on winners, winners focus on winning. And it just reminds me, it's like I want to have that in my mind all the time. Just stay in my lane. Head down, stay in my lane, and then just not worry about what other people are doing. I think it's good to understand what people are doing. Like if you're in business, it's good to have an awareness of competition. It's good to know other people, but just put your head down, be content where you're at, and then just do the work. Be willing to do the work. I've always loved that picture because it embodies the way I want to live my life, at least.
Yeah, you can get caught up focusing on other people, and especially us being in multiple businesses, like oh man, that guy's doing. But nobody really knows what's going on in the back end.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know what I mean? So like what you see is not always the picture.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah. But it's a tough thing to get away from, is not comparing yourself to other people.
It's very tough
in our environment, in our world, in our environment.
Oh yeah,
especially when everybody's pushing everything on you, and you're like, you don't ever feel like you're enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it's just tough you can easily get caught up comparing yourself to everybody all the time.
Yeah.
And then as you level up, you're like, man. And then be careful on that though. You level up too fast, it could be a very big detriment because it's hard to level down.
Yeah. And you just talked about the guys take massive risk, and I think Aaron mentioned it. You guys took big risk, right? But it was calculated risk. Like it wasn't like you just like, oh, let's just do this.
Yeah.
You guys thought through some things. There's common
100%
sense.
we did.
Work. Like that's what maybe people don't always understand. Think of risk like, oh, I've just got to go all in. Well, yeah, you got to go all in, but it's calculated.
Exactly.
Use common sense, right? When you moved from the porta potty from your business to the porta potty business, like you thought through that, right?
I mean, it was the least calculated I've ever done. I would say that.
Yeah.
It was calculated, obviously, but it was more calculated on who I was surrounding myself with.
Exactly.
And, you know what I mean? There was some calculation in there, obviously, but I mean, I would say that was probably so far in my life, that was one of the least calculated when it comes to my entrepreneurship journey.
But there was opportunity. There was potential opportunity, right?
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, the upside was great.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't want to work for somebody. There was a lot of things going on there, but. I would say this too is that, and I said it before, but I'll say it again because I think it's important. I think probably the first step, right, in my opinion, is the least calculated step you'll take, right? Because you're going to do your best, right? But as you're being persistent after you've taken that first step, you become more deadly and more deadly and more deadly and more deadly as long as you're staying persistent in your craft, and that risk goes down to some degree. So I think that's important to know too.
Yeah,
Is that first one's a tough one, right?
Everything's new the first time.
The first one's a tough one, right? But after the first one, it gets easier.
Yeah, and the key is just getting in the game.
It's getting in the game.
Don't
We
be
say
on the
that a lot,
sidelines.
too.
Get in the
Oh,
game.
I remember
Right.
going to my first bank meeting, asked for a bunch of money, and they were throwing out all these acronyms and all. I was like, what the hell? I was in the bank meeting like, oh, I don't want to ask. I'm over here asking for a lot of money. What are you talking about? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now I can walk in there and talk the lingo, and I can go in there and be like, nah, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not doing that. A lot of it's because I signed the wrong piece of paper too many times, so I forced myself to learn what all those things mean. But point is experience will heal a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
And you got to make it. Experience takes time, right? So
Yeah.
you got to make it over a period of time. So we'll wrap it up with this. If you had one thing to tell our audience as an entrepreneur, I know you said persistence, but one thing of your experience being 33, what would you tell a young entrepreneur, or even older guy or woman, whomever, that wants to get into the business? What is one thing that you have learned that you're going to just honed in it's worked for you? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot. That's a good question. There's a lot of things, I think, but if I could condense everything, kind of goes back to those 3 questions I referenced earlier before you get going. But it's kind of, be curious, dream big, and then follow through. It's pretty simple. At the same time, persistence is key, but know why you're doing what you're doing, and then work as hard as you can to make it happen.
Perfect.
All right.
Like it. Well, hey guys, thank you for watching today. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. It's the only way we reach out to a bunch more people, get our message out. Appreciate it. See you next time.